What was the incident at your high school? My high school had a riot and there was and still is a picture of my principal choking a student. Edit. You, Otake, posted the right one, but here it is for anyone else wondering. Married male teacher in his late 30s having an affair with a senior female student. Fairly ordinary. They didn't hide it though. We used to see them smooching all the time. Rumor says he lost his job over it and then followed her to another city when she left for university. She then dumped him for a boy her own age. My high school went on lockdown because my mother was going through a manic episode. Thought I was the second coming of Jesus. And said she was going to save me. I honestly never lived it down. Someone sprayed butyric acid throughout the entire school. In high concentrations. It smells like pure vomit. School reeked for weeks. Police were involved, etc. No culprit was ever found. Pretty tame compared to some of the other stuff here. But my school at one point decided to crack down on anyone who had ever connected to the Tor network from the school Wi-Fi, including on personal devices. Over the course of a day or two, around 200 students were informed that they were banned from using all electronic devices, including those required for class work, while in school for a semester. I remember walking into a programming class and the teacher asking anyone who still had computer access to raise their hand. None did. My school has a kid nicknamed the Study Hall Stroker. Self-explanatory. One of our Japanese teachers got stabbed in the back by a South Korean exchange student. Apparently he'd said some pretty insensitive things about North versus South Korea, and the next day the student came to school with a knife. Teacher was okay. Kid was jailed for 18 months. A sophomore, my classmate, dropped unconscious in gym class and was rushed to the hospital. 3 days later they took him off life support and he died from a brain aneurysm. Edit to add. His funeral was held in the high school gym and damn near everyone went. Never in my life did I think I'd attend a funeral at school. Someone brought their capybara to school and it ended up becoming class president. One of the best students from this one class was found to have stolen his teacher's smartphone and online banking details. He got caught when he did the first transaction. He apparently was into football and wanted to buy some specific football boots, but his parents won't let him. A science teacher was beaten, chased and fatally set on fire by her husband, who then shot himself. A group of kids threw a desk out the third-story window. The desk crashed onto a girl's head and broke her neck. Fortunately she lived. A girl had an epilepsy attack and she lost control of her bowels. Not a pretty sight. Mean Girls type made fun of her. And she transferred to another high school. There was a kid with a violent background who got sent to the local high school in my area from another school, or district maybe. Closing parenthesis. For some reason the state didn't want him to go to jail for being a violent shitty person and hid his records while transferring him. Well, he ended up murdering a girl at the high school he transferred to. I think he raped her as well. Then he raped and murdered his cellmate after going to prison after that. I think he's dead now. Edit. I was actually wrong about the reason he was at the school. He had a juvenile record and been in special classes due to behavioral disorders, couldn't find details. But I assume violent tendencies. But a policy of full inclusion of special ed students means he was integrated into normal school classes. We had so many pregnant teen girls that they had their own gym class. A friend of mine who had a fake leg, he had a solid metal rod from mid-thigh to mid-calf from childhood leukemia, so he couldn't bend at the knee, was in the same class. Just this one poor guy and 30 pregnant 16-year-olds. Edit. I never imagined there would be so many upvotes and questions. I was a teenager in the late 90s and grew up in the southeastern United States. It was a suburban area where a ton of people still identify as evangelical Christians. It's also called the Bible Belt. The required sex education classes didn't teach anything but just say no, so there were girls who thought jumping up and down would prevent pregnancy. Not kidding. These were really sheltered girls who would attend purity dances. So it was quite a scandal that so many were pregnant at the same time. Most of the baby daddies were just dumb teenage boys who didn't know the facts of life. Remember that there was no internet at this point, so it's not like teens could get information on their own, especially if they were from a super religious background. A girl on my street was sent away to live with an aunt when she got pregnant. Also, the pregnant girl gym class was technically for the physically disabled kids. Hence why my friend was the lone guy in the class. His leg, from what he explained to me, had cancer in the bones of his knee. They didn't want to amputate his whole leg, so they removed the knee and grafted a rod in place. This would have been back in the late 80s, so I'm sure they do stuff differently now. In 3 months, November, December and January, 3 guys in my graduating class all died. 1 from suicide, 1 from a skiing accident, and 1 on the track at school. It was extremely eerie and sad. In high school, 2 kids, both named Logan. Both last names were very similar. One was popular and the other was not. Unpopular Logan was drunk and ran across a road in the middle of the night and was killed by a semi-truck. The next day, the principal announced that popular Logan had died. Popular Logan was late for school. Everyone was very sad. Then popular Logan showed up and all school rejoiced that unpopular Logan was the one who died. Was fucked up. Senior prank. Someone dumped a few hundred pounds of flour and yeast into the school indoor pool, in hopes of turning it into a giant glob of dough, I guess. It didn't work. Just caused about 100k damage to plumbing, pumps, filters, etc. Prankster never caught. 1982. Rural Indiana. Someone went into the bathroom, lit a cigarette, and stuck the fuse from a quarter-stick per meter 80 in the other end. Destroyed 1 toilet and a section of the wall. State police bomb squad called in. Explosive trained dogs. Even FBI. I was one of those questioned as I was the typical stoner loser burnout kid. I know who did it. It was one of the pretty people, as they were called back then. He even kinda confirmed it while drunk at our 30th reunion. There was a traitor, leaving smeared feces around the walls in the bathroom. I found one and I'll never forget. Picture was of a flower and sun, drawn in poop. There were several incidents before the person was caught, brown-handed, and several jokes about code browns. So this was like 15 to 16 years ago. Our school used to have a fun little rivalry activity during homecoming week. We had 3 school colors: red, white, and black. On the day of the homecoming assembly, each grade year was assigned one of the colors, and whichever grade has the most participation would be the winner. Sophomores wore red, juniors wore white, and seniors wore black. People would get very into it, dyeing their hair, making signs, trying to bribe teachers onto their teams, etc. It was honestly a lot of stupid fun in a slightly more innocent, ignorant time. Things that would appear to be an obvious problem today: blackface. Anyone? We're not really in our wonderbread Midwestern zeitgeist. Of course. The year after I graduated, it went too far. Most years, the seniors would win this little competition, and the juniors would be grumpy about it. Anticipating this, a few idiot juniors thought it would be funny to show their disdain by dressing up in white with KKK hoods, with a fake lynched black senior dangling from a pole. Yeah, bad time. Last I heard, the kids were suspended. The principal voluntarily retired in response to the backlash. And I'm pretty sure that little tradition has been dead ever since. The broomstick rape of a high school freshman by 3 baseball teammates. 5 years later, the female assistant principal lifted the skirts of girls attending a dance to make sure the students were not wearing thong underwear. Edit. 1 occurred in 1997. 2 in 2002. School is in San Diego, California. One of the science teachers thought having a class project around creating mini-rockets would be a fun little activity. Well, unfortunately he didn't notify the school where or when they were going to test these. So the school goes into lockdown because of the explosions. Him and his class get locked out of the school. Or at least that's what I've been told. Wasn't actually in that class. The teacher, who looked so much like a 70s porn star, did turn out to have made porn in the 70s. My high school in Australia had agricultural learning, so we had livestock at the far end of the oval and some facilities. In the 90s, someone broke into the school and slaughtered all of the animals, all of them, and drew pentagrams and swastikas in blood all over the school. And left decapitated heads around. Pretty historical event for that school. A kid came to school with a machete and tree saw and slashed 7 students the day before Thanksgiving break. And a girl fell through the gym's acoustic ceiling tiles and had to wear a halo. One of the guys at our high school thought it would be funny to pretend he had died in a car accident on a specific date. I've forgotten it now. So he didn't show up for class. Had friends spread rumors right at the beginning of the day about it. People were grieving because he was a part of the popular group. And just well known all around. So he walks in near the middle of the day smiling and laughing. People were shocked but amused, don't ask me why. Closing parenthesis. A year later. Exactly a year later. On the day, he dies in a car wreck due to him and 3 others crossing the border between states to get drugs. The girl driving tried to swerve due to an armadillo. Out of the 4 people, he was the only one to die. People thought it was him trying to pull the same joke that year around. But no. We had the state's, probably all of the U.S., largest sting operation in our school. It began with a senior who looked 25 started at the school. He wouldn't date any girls. Had horrible grades. And missed a lot of school. This undercover cop was trying to buy drugs in school property. He was there for several months. One day we were all sitting in class, and in the class next to us a few cops plus the principal started pulling students out of classes and arresting them. Turns out something like 20+ kids were arrested plus some parents in the whole operation. Made the front page of the AJC with photos and everything. He had like a 7 in math class. And when the teacher would call his parents to discuss his grades, they'd get a separate line to whatever police office was acting like a parent. Apparently he was told to start trying more in class. Pretty funny for those not involved. The superintendent's daughter was at a party dancing drunk on the table. She finished a bottle of Captain Morgan, then shoved it up her puss. Here's how senior year worked. Classes finished 2 weeks before exams started. Exams went on for 2 weeks. Then 2 weeks later there was the graduation and prom. On the last day of classes, the seniors get sent off. It's a pretty big deal with the junior class lining up to hand out flowers and throw confetti as the seniors leave the main school building in a procession. It's really special thing and a part of the larger graduation festivities. Well, the incident was that around 30 people from my class of 120 decided to have an all-night party and get absolutely hammered. They showed up to school absolutely blathered. They were spewing in the hallways and running around the outside bench areas screaming and kicking chairs. They didn't show up to any of the classes. And that was kind of important for a send-off on the last day of classes. By 11 a.m., the administration had had enough. Junior classes and below still had about a month of classes to go. So they didn't care about the noisy idiots outside their windows. The dean ended up calling a school assembly where he cancelled the send-off and gave a speech instead about how disappointed he was in my entire graduating year. Everyone in my graduating year was kicked off the school grounds. My high school had a lot of pine trees in the front grounds, with an adjacent area of open lawn and low shrubs that sloped down to the main road in front. The word spread like wildfire between classes one day that 2 senior students were engaging in coitus on the sloping grass area during class time. Hidden from the school area but in full view of cars driving past. Some of these drivers called the school to complain. And 3 teachers were sent out to locate the 2 students and enforce decency, so to speak. I never heard later what happened to the 2 students involved. Edit. Coitus, used as substitute for having sex. Bonking. Doing the horizontal tango. Etc. School officer killed himself at home. The day after the news made its way around school, some kid wore the Marilyn Manson shirt with a cop putting a gun to his own head. Another kid at my school tried to put a goat curse on a teacher. He was later on a Sally Jesse Raphael episode in full goth talking about how he shaves everywhere but his head. Not my school. But one in the next district had the suicide that the song Jeremy by Pearl Jam is about. So back in the early 80s, a kid at our school's older brother disappeared. The cops searched the neighborhood and went door to door trying to find out what happened to him. Spoke to every kid in school in case they knew anything. Wasn't long before he was discovered had been the victim of a serial killer. He was only 16. There were several. All involving the sophomores when I was a senior. There was something seriously wrong with the class of 2008. Some highlights. One kid started printing $20 bills from his dad's office. Apparently he was good at it as the Secret Service paid him a visit. Multiple incidents of alcohol on campus. My class wasn't innocent in this. We all at one time passed around a bottle of spiked Gatorade. But these kids drank to such excess that they had to be hospitalized. It got to the point where the school banned all water bottles and drinks from home. And finally, the Great Thermometer Incident of 2006. Basically, a group of sophomores broke open an old glass thermometer and played with the mercury inside. They did this in the cafeteria before first bell. So around second period an announcement is made telling everyone who was in the CAF before first bell to report to the auditorium immediately. A third of the school shows up. Myself included. They then proceed to lock us in and inform us we have to wait to be cleared by a hazmat team. That hazmat team took their sweet fucking time getting there and we didn't leave the school until 6 to 7 p.m. Those of us with jobs basically lost a day's pay. It's been 17 years. And I still want to throat punch the Three Stooges who did that. Edit. I forgot to add. Around 2 to 3 p.m. some rumor started that hazmat had arrived and was ready to start checking students. This led to hundreds of kids gathering around the stage of the auditorium. A crowd crush almost occurred. One kid was wheeled off on a stretcher with thankfully minor injuries. All of this because some idiot wanted to play with mercury. My science teacher shot himself with a rifle in his garden. Struggled with depression for a long time. I went to a Catholic school. The school priest was accused of molesting a disabled minor. Never heard of him again after the accusation. I don't know if he did it, but the guy was kinda creepy. Update. Since I got so many upvotes, I decided to some digging on this case. I looked online and found that the same priest got in trouble about 2 years ago for inappropriately touching a minor. The actual case occurred about 10 years ago. I couldn't find anything online regarding the actual case I posted about, so I asked my sister if she knew anything. According to her, the minor that the priest supposedly molested was not only physically disabled, she needed a wheelchair, but also mentally disabled. So she was not a reliable source. Therefore, the priest didn't get in any trouble. At the end of my senior year, one of the girls in our senior class got pregnant. That's it. We were a magnet school full of nerds excelling in medical science and only 304 people in my graduating class. No one ever got pregnant in our high school before. There was a suitcase that was left unattended across the street from the school. Just standing upright on the sidewalk. It had been there for hours, and so the principal freaked out because she thought it was a bomb. So the bomb squad arrived, followed by 20 million cop cars while the students went on lockdown. Turns out some dude genuinely just forgot his suitcase on accident. Maybe he was carrying a bunch of stuff or was in a rush. And all of that was for nothing. Memes were made about it and were being uploaded to the unofficial school Instagram during the lockdown. Shortly after I left my school, one of my old teachers had a nervous breakdown and was institutionalized. Edit. This comment blew up, so I changed a few words to better protect their identity. My class had an anonymous blogger a la Gossip Girl who would target each of us in turns, like spreading rumors about students and teachers and trying to turn friend groups against each other. This was an all-female class. Nothing too dramatic, but we spent the whole year trying to figure out who it was. Narrowed it down to be someone from our class and from band. In the end we gave up because everyone found her writing style so over the top and annoying, and the lack of attention caused the blog posts to appear less frequently till it stopped altogether. Coolest guy in school was an amazing guitarist. Really good at fingerpicking. Super lovely. Talked to everyone. Even the teachers loved him. He was in my homeroom, Australian high school. He was older, but he used to let me sit near him sometimes. One weekend he went out with some friends to play with firecrackers. Firecrackers are super illegal here because of the bushfire risk, anyway. The guy blew all of his fingers on both hands off. He didn't come back to school for a few months. And then one day he came back. Sat in the corner with a hoodie over his face and his hands buried deep in his pockets. Never spoke to anyone again. Couldn't play guitar, couldn't even open a door. So fucking sad. We were all so sad for him. Kid in the year below me hung himself in a forest somewhere. This is pretty tame but funny. We had a music teacher who absolutely doused herself in perfume. It was like a cloud all around her all day. Every day. You could pretty much smell her before you saw her. We had music after lunch, so a few were in the room to kill the remaining 10 minutes of lunch. One girl went through her desk and found her perfume and sprayed it once, laughing that she was Mrs. X. Few minutes later Mrs. X walks in, sniffs and starts looking around, and we all think we are in trouble because she must know we were in the drawers. She then proceeds to tell the girls that they shouldn't wear such cheap, nasty perfume because now her room stinks of cheap perfume. Never tried harder to stifle a laugh in my life. When this guy wearing a junior ROTC uniform hijacked a bus. I grew up in the hood. So when newscasters interviewed fellow students, all they did was clown on the guy. I was cracking up watching it on TV because media was trying to make it look like it had the same gravity as a school shooting, but the students themselves treated it like it was hood rat shenanigans. Bomb threat and armed police storming the building, I think? Also on a trip to Iceland. Everyone got food poisoning and the teacher who was meant to look after the kids was out getting drunk and hitting on women at a local bar. He got in trouble for that. Physical education teacher in her late 20s slept with a 17-year-old student. Teacher lost her job. The student was praised for bagging the hot teacher. We had a social studies teacher who was eccentric. Very weird guy. So my last year of school, he wins Teacher of the Year. He's giving his acceptance speech for it and he references a student who'd been sexually assaulted a week ago and says, "Just like Molly. I wasn't expecting it but I wanted it." Jaws hit the fucking floor. He was fired not long after. Shit bandit. He would shit in lockers and teachers' desks and leave the note, "If my demands are not met, the shit bandit will strike again." There were never any demands. I knew exactly who it was. But I ain't snitching even after all these decades. One student was picked up at work by her ex-boyfriend one night. As she got off work at Sears at the mall, her ex-boyfriend proceeded to drive them both to the cemetery where they had previously spent time together. She was goth. Killed her with a gun and then set the car on fire to complete a murder-suicide. It was state testing week and let me tell you, nobody was worrying about testing that week. Softball coach had a heart attack in the girls' locker room 2 hours after practice. Luckily there was one girl still there to call 911 for him. 2 actually. Both really bad. A kid who was homosexual got a blanket thrown over him in a stairway where they beat him mercilessly and then threw him down the stairs. Never caught who did it. He never came back and I don't blame him. 2 kids called up a pizza place and ordered a pizza for delivery to an abandoned house. When the delivery guy came they proceeded to shoot him multiple times until he was dead. Really bad scene. They even based a Law and Order episode about it. Very hot. Very much married teacher with 2 kids slept with a senior. He was already 18 so the whole thing got buried. She was fired and the story never really got out except for those of us who knew the guy personally. She had been flirting with him and communicating on the DL for most of high school but waited until he was 18 actually do anything. In the 5th grade, our PE teacher had our class hula hoop for physical activity. 2 girls in the class ended up hula hooping the entire 45 minutes 1 hour of the class without stopping. Our teacher decided that it would be fun to see how long these 2 girls could go. By the end of the school day, 1 girl was still going and had not stopped. Our teacher then got the wild idea that this girl should keep going to try breaking the world record. The students' parents were called and they gave her permission to make the attempt. Someone looked up the rules of Guinness World Records and discovered that you can take a few minutes break every hour. The local news was called and they filmed this poor girl hula hooping her heart out. She finally gave up around 12:30 a.m. This took place in the late 1980s in Roswell, GA, at Mimosa Elementary. The same year, the same PE teacher taught our class to juggle. Within 3 months, she started a juggling club in which I was a member. We eventually had a choreographed routine. With music, printed Mimosa Jugglers t-shirts and began performing our routine at other local elementary schools. It was weird but actually pretty fun at the time. We juggled balls, rings and plastic bowling pins. I ended up discovering that I could juggle 3 apples while taking a bite out of one. It was a crowd pleaser lol. Which one do you want? Our senior t-shirts were literally the incident from each year. Freshman. Older HS kids are having a party near the end of the school year. Get busted. One tries to run from the cops and crashes into the electrical transformer in front of the school, giving everyone 2 days off. Sophomore. Some moron stole 3 mercury thermometers from a science class and decided it would be fun to smash them in the gym during a passing period. School was evacuated and the gym was closed for a week. Junior. Someone made a bomb threat against the school. The police said they had it covered and kids wouldn't be in danger. Only about half the school showed up anyway. It was a very odd day. Senior. Kid brought a gun to school to show his friend. Others kids saw it, and by the time I arrived, free period first period, so I didn't have to come to school until period 2 senior year. The school was surrounded by police officers and newscopters and I was yelled at to go home. School was locked down all day as they went room to room searching. My old Spanish teacher actually thought the cops were the active shooter and tackled one as he came into the room. He ended up with a giant lump on his head. But he was a hero to us all after that. 3 younger girls, one of them was my classmate's girlfriend at the time, got trampled, suffocated to death in an overcrowded music venue. They let in close to 3,000 people, which was about double the place's actual capacity. But there were some other damning circumstances. They ushered people through too quickly as the doors were opened late. And apparently someone falsely yelled that someone got stabbed on one of the higher up floors, which caused panic and people were trying to flee. I don't think my mate ever really got over it. But at least they cracked down on some places in the area and rules became stricter. Still too many shit venues around though. Easter egg hunt. In 1998, I think 5 people were injured. One had to be taken by helicopter to the hospital. I was never really sure of the specifics. But apparently some of the parents were trying to cheat and find eggs for their kids, instead of letting the kids do it themselves. This led to arguments and things got out of hand. Fortunately, no one died. And the school didn't ban Easter egg hunts. It just banned parents from it. Chlorine plant across the street blew up. Cheerleader getting suspended leave for flashing her boobs during pep rally. I was in the pep rally. I missed it. Well, considering I graduated in 1970 from a very small Midwestern school largely run by Mennonites, I seem to recall someone might have gotten pregnant. I can still see old Mr. Turner walking down the aisle calling 2 feet, 2 feet, telling all boys and girls to stay 2 feet apart. Lol, oh the good old days. Not my high school but one near me. Someone got access to all the monitors in the school and just blasted porn. Video and all. Was wild. The senior prank. The school had just poured thousands of dollars into a remodel. New entrance. New steel welded sign and all new parking lot, entryway. 2 months later, weeks before graduation, the sign of the school was rewielded to say so long and a chemical was poured on the new entryway that read fuck name of school. Edit. There was much debate about whether this was seniors from out school or seniors from a rival school. New security cameras had been installed but they only sort of identified one of the seniors. The kid denied it as he was on the basketball team and had a lot to lose. The only thing I can think of was when during the sports area makeover, that also happened to be during our mock exams, they found unfired or live or whatever bomb and evacuated everyone and had to call a bomb squad. Merits of living in a post-Soviet country that had a colorful history for most of the last 1,000 years. My HS wanted to be inclusive. Made gender-neutral bathrooms. Obviously people started fucking in the bathrooms. 2 guys swam to school. It was located on an island, through the most busy commercial shipping lane on the continent. When I was a junior in high school, a kid in the grade below me set our school on fire and successfully burned down a big part of it. It happened in April, the Monday after prom. He got caught cheating on the standardized tests that the state of Texas required us to take at that time. And this is how he chose to retaliate for not getting to finish his test. We had just taken the tests. And they were all in the front office waiting to get shipped to the state. Therefore they all burned and we had to retake them. A lad leaned too far back on his chair and split his head open. Everybody in the UK knows about it. Apparently. We had your standard public school stuff. Creepy teachers, I've actually found one of them on Reddit before. Ick. Fights at least weekly. Etc. But the one that stands out above all is the phantom shitter. The phantom shitter is a still unidentified student who, in between the two busiest lunch periods of the day, managed to take a massive, stinky dump in the middle of the hallway leading to the cafeteria. Nobody saw who did it. And somehow the cameras caught nothing. The school barely even tried to catch him. They knew they were no match for the sheer willpower of the phantom shitter. 2 girls were apparently murdered by a bunch of guys. Happened way before I got there. Girl drunkenly fell asleep in a guy's parked car. Woke up in passenger seat and needed to take a shit. Couldn't figure out how to get out of the car? So ended up shitting in the car. And then ran off. Very good looking girl, but couldn't bring her up without someone saying she shat in a car. I was homeschooled and my entire existence was the incident LMAO. It was at a friend's high school. Biology teacher showed signs of schizophrenia and wanted to go to the administration to request a weapon permit for a katana. He got denied. Went back home to pick up his katana and proceeded to slash randomly around him. He got arrested but in the process fatally wounded a pregnant police officer. My senior year, a girl was pushed into the bathroom and was saw. The school didn't do anything about it. There was a guy who broke up with his girlfriend and started dating someone new. The ex went into a jealous rage. Stole a knife from cooking class. Pulled the new girl aside at lunch to talk, and nearly stabbed her to death. Multiple stab wounds, including one that was dangerously close to her heart. She survived. And the ex went to juvie. In fact, she recently got out and added a ton of us on FB. HS Football Friday. One of the players emancipated himself and had a small shack out in the woods. Big kegger. An older kid graduate shows up at some point. Later that night, the older kid D drives into the rear end of a payloader, killing him. An investigation leads to many underage kids getting in trouble. Starting football lineup was all involved. Wrecked the season. The emancipated kid took all the trouble. We had an assembly and the principal says, heads will roll. A girl left her dead baby and THR trunk of her car for months. Took her car to the shop and the shop discovered the remains. She essentially ended up walking scot-free on probation for like 7 years. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to drop a like. If you would like to see more content like this in the future, subscribe and turn on notifications to be notified about future videos. Now check out one of these interesting videos.